We're good. Good morning and welcome everyone to the meeting of the Growth and Regeneration Scrutiny Panel. Can I remind attendees that this meeting is being webcast and ask that mobile phones be put on silent, please. Before we move on to the formal agenda, can we do a round of introductions? I am Councillor Zarina Amin.
I'm Councillor Bill Armour.
Councillor Alison Monroe.
Councillor Harry McCarthy.
Councillor Graham Turner, Portfolio Holder for Finance, Regen and Economic Growth.
Officers.
Joanne Bartholomew, Director for Development.
Hi, Thomas Fish, Joint Acting Head of Housing Growth.
Liz Jefferson, Joint Acting Head of Housing Growth.
Yourself.
Jenny Bryce-Chan, Governance Officer.
Thank you. Agenda item 1, membership of the committee. I've just asked the Governance Officer, have there been any apologies for the meeting?
We've had apologies from Councillor Aziz Darji, Chris Friend and Jonathan Milner.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Can I ask panel members, are you happy to approve and second the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of January as a correct record?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare? If you have an interest to declare, can you please complete the form attached to the agenda papers and submit that to Jenny at the end of the meeting? Agenda item 4, admission of the public. There are no exclusions of the public items and all agenda items will be considered in public session. Agenda item 5, deputations and petitions. Jenny, have we received any deputations and petitions?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, public question time. Jenny, have we received any questions from any members of the public?
Again, none received.
Thank you. Agenda item 7, housing growth update. Can I ask officers to please present your item? Thank you.
Chair, I'll just do a quick introduction. As you pointed out, this is an update on the housing growth. There's a lot of really positive news in this report, and it's a real pleasure to see some of the more difficult sites moving forward now. Obviously, as always with housing, there's much more that we could do, but I think we're in a really positive place, and I think the future is looking very bright. So I'll hand over to the officers now.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Turner. Okay, I'm going to run through the first part of this presentation and then Liz is going to pick up the second part. So this is an update from Scrutiny that we brought March 2024, and we'll just set out what we're going to talk about today once the next slide uploads, and it'll set out the agenda items. We're going to break it down and talk about some specific updates on specific topic areas. I'll just let it catch up. While we're waiting, if you want to have a look at the images that are on that screen and have a... There we go. We'll see if you can relay those images back to some of the items we talk about today. So essentially, I won't dwell on this slide because these are the topic areas we're going to talk about. So we'll move on. Excellent. Okay, so a bit of strategic context about what feeds into the work that we do. So since coming to power, the current government have re-emphasised the need to provide homes and made an overall commitment to deliver 1.5 million new homes in the next 5 years. Some of those changes have come through in terms of the reintroduction of mandatory housing targets, reform of the planning system, and discussions around planning for new towns. From a regional context and West Yorkshire Combined Authority, the West Yorkshire Mayor has reaffirmed her commitment to deliver 5,000 affordable homes by 2028, and those homes will be delivered by the 5 West Yorkshire authorities. In a local context, the Strategic Housing Market Assessment for Kirklees that feeds into the current local plan sets out the need for 1,700 homes every year. Over 1,000 of those are based on affordable housing need, and that strategic housing market assessment is being updated and refreshed to feed into the new local plan, which will set new targets, new policies and potentially new housing sites. Alongside that, as a housing growth service, we are aware and working with our housing services colleagues to address the 19,000 people and families who are on the housing waiting list in Kirklees. And the Housing Growth Service does numerous different things and undertakes activities to deliver directly and to facilitate housing growth to meet those needs across Kirklees. So if we can move on to the next slide, please, Liz. So just focusing on the 2 of the biggest sites that are within the remit for the Housing Growth Team to help deliver and facilitate. Dewsbury Riverside, south of Ravensthorpe, is the largest housing allocation in the current local plan. Over the last 12 months, we've made significant progress working with Homes England and looking at the site and the specific technical needs of the site to deliver it. We've been looking at the strategic approach as to how to bring landowners together, which acquisitions are needed, and we've been engaging with the market of master developers, who are those developers of a size and scale with the experience to put in infrastructure to prepare large sites for housing, create new communities, and then engage with specific house builders for each plot. We've done some soft market testing around that master developer market and had some positive feedback, which is informing our next steps, which will be to go out to procure the right master developer to bring the site forward in 2025-26. Alongside that, we know that public funding is likely to be needed because of the significant infrastructure costs. So we're working with Homes England to submit a funding bid to them to support the scheme with their own funding, which will also be progressed to this year. Looking at Bradley Park, north of Huddersfield, the council owns a significant chunk of this site, and it is also an important strategic housing site in the local plan to deliver around 2,000 homes. Over the last 12 months, work's been focusing on the technical work and the highways work and looking at progressing strategic acquisitions to unlock the site and deliver its first phase. That first phase will be brought forward for development this year in the form of procuring a house builder for the first 500 homes on this site. There's ongoing technical work will inform that, but the target is to commence that procurement in the middle of this year, with the first phase delivery stages following that point. We'll move on to the next slide, please, Liz. Another area of focus that the town is involved in is around town centre living. So we have the 2 blueprints and the blueprint visions for both Huddersfield and Dewsbury. Town centre living is an important part of these blueprints and an important part of the government's agenda as well for the increasing footfall and vibrancy of town centres, to support the other uses and to support all the other investment and schemes that are ongoing in both Huddersfield and Dewsbury. Focusing on Huddersfield specifically, our current focus is on estate buildings, which is a key heritage asset, Grade 2 star listed and in St George's Square, to use as an exemplar of high quality residential conversion, which will exceed space standards and provide high quality living to diversify the housing market in Huddersfield. The Housing Growth Team have been successful in the last 12 months to secure £1.25 million from the One Public Estate Brownfield Land Release Fund, which is about investing in brownfield land and buildings to unlock those for housing. The next stages for estate buildings are to speak to potential further funders and delivery partners to start the construction on physically converting the site for new homes within the town centre. Looking at Dewsbury, As part of the Dewsbury Town Investment Plan, the Daisy Hill area between the train station running towards the centre of the town is a focus for long-term housing-led regeneration. The previous funding from government has been used to acquire some properties. We have ongoing negotiations to acquire further properties, and the first catalytic development opposite the train station, Field House, is well on the way of being finalised, setting that context for higher quality residential living within Dewsbury. As part of the acquisitions we've made, we are now looking at putting the second building to the market opposite the train station, which will complement what is happening at Field House and start to build that narrative around Daisy Hill neighbourhood and creating that focus for town centre living. At the same time, we've done engagement with the market, and we know that the market are interested in bigger sites and opportunities, and we're likely to leverage more investment if we can provide greater opportunity. So we're working with our town centres colleagues at where there might be other opportunities within the town centre that could possibly be repurposed for housing moving forwards. And we will look at that as part of the longer term plans for Dewsbury and the plans for neighbourhoods which are in development by our town centres colleagues. And I think I'll pass over to Liz now.
So I'd just like to start by talking about some of the sites where we're developing specialist homes. So at Ashview in Huddersfield in the last year, we've completed 50 units, which is a council extra care scheme. And this scheme provides homes for people with a range of care and support needs and allows people to live independently for longer. And in a similar vein at Kenmore Drive at Cleckheaton, we're delivering an extra care scheme with Housing Association, Housing 21. When it's complete, this will be an 80-unit scheme, all for affordable rent. Work started on site at Kenmore Drive in February last year and has progressed steadily over the last year, with work focusing on groundworks and on drainage. And then finally, in terms of where we're working on specialist accommodation, at St Paul's Road, Murfield, we're working with Housing Association Connect to deliver 13 homes for adults with a social care need. Legal work is ongoing to dispose of this site to Connect, and we expect to start on site in spring this year. So just moving on to talk about temporary accommodation. We have, as Thomas has touched on, in Kirklees a significant housing waiting list, and directly linked to that are the number of individuals and families who are living in temporary accommodation. And this has both a significant financial and human cost. So this is a new area of work for us as a service, where we're working closely with housing services to deliver solutions to address this need. And so far we've undertaken work to analyse the current provision and need for different types of temporary accommodation across the district. And over the course of this year, we'll develop a strategy for delivering temporary accommodation to meet those needs, and where necessary start a procurement with the ultimate aim of reducing and eliminating families and individuals who are living in B&B. And then linked to thinking about our housing waiting list, we have a number of sites where we're delivering 100% affordable homes. So with Housing Association 13, we're working to deliver 100% affordable homes on 5 sites across the district. And overall, around 200 homes will be delivered through this project. And they will be a mix of affordable rent and shared ownership. In relation to this project, a planning application has been submitted for the first site at Main Avenue, Cowsley, and we expect to start on site in November this year. We've also been successful in securing One Public Estates funding to start to undertake enabling works on the site at Highmore Lane, which is part of that programme. And as well as undertaking direct delivery within housing growth, we have an affordable housing team who are the first point of contact for advice on affordable homes, and they respond formally on planning applications. and specifically they focus on securing homes through the Section 106 process, which is part of planning. And as a direct result of the team's work, 210 affordable homes were delivered in the year 23-24, and the team continues to support delivery partners to secure more affordable housing during this year. In terms of our market and affordable sites, so we have 3 sites where there's a mixture of market and affordable homes being delivered. At Suthill in Batley, this site's been supported by the Homes England Accelerated Construction Programme, and the focus is on delivering homes at pace using modern methods of construction. Overall, this site will deliver 319 homes when complete, at least 112 of which will be affordable. And to date, 128 homes have either been sold privately as market homes or transferred to a housing association. And this development will continue at pace over the course of this year, and the overall completion date for the site is December 2026. At Fenny Lane, Almondbury, over the course of last year, this site has progressed through a competitive land sale process, focused on working with strategic partners of Homes England. An announcement about this site will be made in the near future, and Fenny Lane will deliver 150 homes of mixed tenure, including market homes, discount and market sale, affordable rent and shared ownership properties, and a start on site is anticipated in 2026. And finally, at Ashview, whilst our focus, as I've mentioned, has been on the delivery of the Council Extra Care Scheme, this site will also deliver 98 market sale and 21 affordable homes, and the overall site is due for completion next month. So we would just like to conclude by talking about some of the key learning and challenges that we've had and look forward to the coming year. So in terms of the challenges and learning that we have, as Thomas has mentioned, we do have a very significant housing waiting list of 19,000, and building homes is a slow and complex process. So it is a challenge for us to continue to meet a growing housing need. Affordability. Affordable rents are not always affordable in the Kirklees economy, and as we develop a new strategic housing market assessment, working with planning colleagues as part of the local plan process, we're likely to see a greater emphasis come onto social rents as part of that. We've also, sort of in terms of the physical challenges, experienced challenges this year working on infill sites, particularly on our site at Kenmore Drive. So where we're developing within existing communities, access is difficult, and that can lead to a challenging relationship with local residents around parking and working hours and how the site is managed. And we also experience on our sites a lot of challenges relating to Kirklees geography. So the Pennine environment that we're in means we have a lot of steeply sloping sites with drainage issues, and these sites are costly to develop and mean that we often experience viability issues, so where the site is not profitable for developers. And finally, on partnership working, I'm sure in common with a lot of services we experience a lot of resource pressure both inside and outside the council. And in particular, in the last year, our experience has been that housing associations have a much reduced appetite for risk. So finally, to look forward, in the next year, the work of the service will focus on delivering our strategic sites at Bradley Park and Dewsbury Riverside, as Thomas has talked about, delivering housing in our town centres to support our blueprint vision, delivering solutions to address the number of families and individuals living in temporary accommodation, and supporting the delivery of a new local plan, both in terms of maintaining our current housing allocations and securing new land for homes to be built. That's everything from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the presentation to the officers. I do have a couple of quite general issues I'd like to raise, actually questions I'd like answers to. The first one relates to temporary accommodation. And I'm just wondering, are we in a position where the council finds itself in competition with government, central government, for temporary accommodation? And I have in mind the Manchester Road formerly set up as student accommodation, which is now apparently going to be taken over by central government. So is there a competition there?
I don't think there is a space for where this competition, from a temporary accommodation perspective, for us, it's normally reasonably easy to get single individuals out of temporary accommodation and into full-time accommodation. So the wait list within bed and breakfast or temporary accommodation tends to churn through councillor armour. For us, what we're looking for is provision for family temporary accommodation. And so I don't see that there's any competition for that.
Thank you. My second point, about the mechanics of the situation. We hear about a waiting list and hear very frequently about waiting lists for housing. I'm not sure, and I would like to be told, how this is managed. Is it updated regularly? And how accurate is it? Because we do, or certainly I, hear cases of people who are on a waiting list who are actually found accommodation but just not removed the names from the waiting list. So I'm just wondering how accurate the waiting list is.
So the waiting list is a housing solutions function, not a housing growth. So it doesn't belong with Liz and Thomas, but it does belong under my remit. So on the housing system, you as an individual resident or prospective resident will fill in your own details. And that will give you an allocation banding, and that allocation banding supports the priority of your need in terms of bidding. So it is quite likely on that system that there will be individuals that haven't removed themselves because they've found other properties. For those individuals within the higher bandings, such as the A's and B's, where there's an acute or urgent need for those individuals to be found other accommodation, although what I would say is that you can still be waiting a considerable amount of time in A and B, particularly if you are waiting for a large family home. For those individuals, we would normally be in a reasonable level of contact, and we do monitor when people do bid. So if you've been inactive on the system for a while, we will get in touch with you. But with thousands and thousands of people on the system, our resources are mainly focused with ensuring those people on an A and B criteria are getting the support they need to make effective housing choices.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Munro.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for your report. So I'd just like to pick up on, first of all, I've got some general questions, but my first question relates to the site at Fenny Lane. And in the interest of transparency and in the interest of council taxpayers, at the Cabinet meeting in November, over a year ago, I asked for this site to be brought back to Cabinet once evaluation was known. However, this report states the site has been progressed through a competitive land sale process. But we were all told recently at a full council meeting that the council still did not have a valuation for the site. So, in addition, if you haven't identified a strategic partner yet, how can the land have been sold? So I'd just like some clarification on this, please.
Officers have been to Cabinet regarding this and have Cabinet approval to move forward with disposal of the site. The site, we're currently in commercial confidential dialogue with the potential partner for us to work with, but we do expect within the next 2 months that we'll be able to report who that partner is.
Thank you. But so you actually haven't identified a partner yet, because my understanding is that the Homes England funding dried up last year. The government were due to announce its spring review in January for the next round of funding, but they've delayed that until June. So could you just clarify that for me, please?
Just to clarify, we are in dialogue with a partner. We're just not able to release the name of that partner at this point in time.
So does that mean you've actually sold the land?
It means that we're in a commercial conversation with another party, and we'll get, when we've completed the legalities and moving forward with that, we'll be able to get to that point. So technically, in answer to your question, the land has not passed from us to another party yet, but we are in extensive negotiations.
Right, so can I ask for it to be brought back to Cabinet? I asked for that to happen last year, so that we can understand the financials, because it's being sold at less than market value, and I understand that's a considerable amount of money. So I would like to know why this is why the council wants to do this in the interest of council taxpayers. I want to know. We need to know. We need to know why, in the interest of council taxpayers. Thanks. That you're getting best value. Thank you.
We, under the current legislation, we are allowed to dispose at less than best interest if there's a commercial benefit for the council, and there's a definite benefit for the council here. So, as Joanna's rightly pointed out, the negotiations are ongoing at the moment, and at the point it's we can release that information, we will do. But as I say, we do have the powers under the legislation to dispose of assets and land to below best consideration.
This question is more generalised. You'd be relieved to know. I just wondered about basically about the housing list. So you're saying it's a housing solutions housing list, and has that? I mean, is that basically increasing year on year? That's what I want to know. And how, you know, I mean, how are you ever going to address it really? You know.
Okay, so I am mindful that we're here with a report on housing growth, and housing solutions is a separate service. Okay. But because you can register, then yes, the list, we do expect that the list will increase. Obviously, house building within Kirklees is not at the rate that would be needed in order to meet all the current need, and certainly some of it is not at the type. But there are a number of things that are due to happen over the next year, such as the Renters' Rights Bill and a number of other things that will mean that there's a change within some of the market, which might, I think, free up some more private sector rented, which will possibly allow people to come off the list. But fundamentally, the work that Housing Growth does, which is to stimulate and support the building of new homes, is what's needed in order to reduce the waiting list.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Councillor Munro, could you just take coffee? Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
Thanks, Chair. I was hoping you could clarify just something in the report about the temporary accommodation stuff. So it says working to deliver solutions to address the need for temporary accommodation. Just to clarify, is that increasing the amount of temporary accommodation that is available to then kind of reduce the amount of the number of people that have to spend time in B&B? And what does that, I suppose, what does that look like? Is it a case of, are we building new temporary accommodation, or are we buying it from the private sector, or going into some sort of partnership with the private or the social sector? What do those solutions look like?
So I'll just answer the first bit of your question, then I'll bring Liz in to talk about the different models that we could use. Our aim is to no longer have anybody in bed and breakfast accommodation. It is not where any of us would aspire for ourselves or our families to live, and there is a real human cost to that, as well as the financial cost to the authority. In order to do that, we need to provide family-sized temporary accommodation. And in doing that, there are many different models that we can use, some of which we've piloted already to great success. One of the things we are considering is geographically where we place temporary accommodation in order to not destabilise any private sector market, because fundamentally what we don't want to do is destabilise permanent homes for people. But Liz will now outline the sort of different options that we've got, but as Liz has indicated earlier, we are looking at all sorts of models. Liz?
Thanks, Joanne. So when we're looking at increasing the supply of temporary accommodation, there's 3 areas that supply temporary accommodation. There's some of our own council stock which is allocated for temporary accommodation. There's a need for some specialist supported temporary accommodation, and then there's a more general need for temporary accommodation to address the number of families and individuals in B&B currently. So in the work that we've described in the report, we're focusing on, as Joanna said, the need to get families and individuals out of B&B and on the specialist side. So in terms of the options for bringing people out of bed and breakfast, we have a lot of different sort of competing offers coming to us, don't we, at the moment, Joanne? Some of those are from the private sector. Other options that we're looking at is where some properties are surplus to our requirements as assets. We're looking at piloting the conversion of those to temporary accommodation. We've successfully, as Joanne's mentioned, looked at using surplus student accommodation, such as at Ashenhurst. So what we're currently trying to do is look at all these competing models and look at which the best value for us financially, but also in terms of that human cost of getting families out of B&B as quickly as possible, so that we're comparing apples and apples from these different approaches. So we don't know definitively yet what we will use, but we are looking at all the options and the people who've come to us so that we can make an informed decision, if that makes sense. And then separately on the specialist sort of side of TA, we're looking at our options for how we would work with housing associations to deliver our need on that. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that does. I appreciate at the moment it's more like an intelligence gathering and finding a solution rather than actually deciding upon something,
And modelling it financially as well.
Yeah. So we could do everything from buying to leasing, long-term, short-term, bulk numbers. We could purchase to deal with a temporary accommodation problem to then convert into social housing stock or resell later on. So it's quite a complicated set of modelling, but for us, I think the where is it point is incredibly important, because we need to make sure that people who are in temporary accommodation are, wherever possible, getting a temporary home and a permanent home in a geography that can support their needs.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. As I said, as the officers have pointed out, there's an awful lot of work going on around this, and Joanne just alluded to it there, that the people are in the right place. I was reading something only at the weekend where some London authorities are buying homes as far away as the North East now to put their temporary residents in. That is not something, obviously, we would ever go down that route. So the route we're taking of finding accommodation within Kirklees to the best geographical location for the residents is absolutely right. And as I say, because this is a national problem, everybody's taking a different path. But as I say, I was horrified to read that some London authorities are looking at the North East. That's 250, 300 miles from where they are. That's appalling. But that shows us the level of the problem nationally. And I think some of the things we're doing are really groundbreaking and really innovative. And I think it's right to praise the officers for the work we've done on this, because it is a challenge. There's no doubt about that, but I think we're doing some really good things. We are making real progress that not only actually addresses the issue, but addresses the issue in the right way, that makes people out of bed and breakfast, into accommodation, but within an area where the support, they still got the family networks, etc., wherever possible.
So thanks for that. I've got just a few more questions on this. The first one was one of my overalls is sitting on the West Yorkshire Combined Authority Scrutiny Panel. And one of the things that has come through that is the local growth plan, which, if you read the devolution white paper, is going to be like it's going to be sort of, I think, the thing that joins together all the different threads and kind of investment and so on. It's going to be the thing that is used by the Combined Authority and also central government to just sort of focus where investment goes. So I know that a lot of I think in the growth plan they call them spatial clusters or something, but a lot of these sites are already in there. But just to ask really, as far as possible, are we sort of making sure that all of our investment opportunities and growth opportunities are kind of in that plan? Because it's going to be something, I think, that is used very, very, very heavily in the future to kind of determine where investment goes from Homes England, for example. And the second one is to ask the parochial question lastly. We've got a big levelling up project in our ward in Marsden, and one part of that would be housing, but effectively that housing section is kind of, I don't think mothballing is the right word, but it's going to be delayed until kind of like the later stages where they'll do a lot of the heritage work and do a lot of work to on that side of things, but the housing bit inside will actually become available. So I don't know if there's something that you could do to kind of look at that potentially. That's not to answer now, it's just to make you aware that kind of there is a big project in our ward in an area where there is a big housing need, and it's also quite in demand area is Marsden and the Colne Valley. So just to look at kind of if there's something that the housing growth team could do, for example, to help speed that bit along, because it's the one bit of the project that's kind of been, I suppose, necessarily, I think the developers have made the right decision to kind of push it backwards compared to the other parts of the scheme. Thank you.
So I'll attempt to answer your last bit first, and then I'll bring Thomas in on Wicker and Homes England. So in terms of the Levelling Up Fund for Marsden Mills, which sits again within my remit in the town centres team, we have supported the developer and the owner to bring forward a scheme, and they have got some money from government that is being grant funded and delegated through ourselves. So we can certainly have a conversation outside of here about how we move forward with the housing at perhaps a different pace. What I would say is we've got extensive experience of remodelling heritage buildings for housing, and it is not an easy process. And it is an incredibly expensive process and unlikely to be the part of any development in which you get your return on. So quite often it can be a later part. But we'll come back to you on that, Councillor. In terms of our relationship with Wicker and Homes England, we are a very strong partner of Homes England, and in particular with Dewsbury Riverside and the work that we're doing there. So I'm going to pass over to Thomas to talk to you about that.
Thanks, John. Thanks for your question, Councillor. So the local growth plan the Combined Authority have produced, it exists alongside some other competing plans that we also feed into. So there's the housing implementation plan for the West Yorkshire Combined Authority housing strategy. There is spatial priority areas that the Combined Authority set out, which shows specific areas for growth in each authority, and they have that mapped and worked to delivering that. And the overarching strategic place partnership that was launched in 2023, I believe, which is a commitment for Homes England, the Combined Authority and the authorities of West Yorkshire to work together to deliver housing and regeneration. So within that strategic place partnership, there's a pipeline of sites, and those important sites, and for Kirklees, Dewsbury Riverside, Bradley Park, the town centres are important elements of that pipeline. The pipeline's all constantly reviewed and refreshed with the work that we do together with Homes England and the Combined Authority. And all those priorities should align and be reflected in the local growth plan. So we do feed into that, and we do have oversight to make sure that those priorities are reflected to meet the needs of Kirklees.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions as well. Just on the temporary accommodation, did I hear correctly that you've done a few pilot schemes? So just if you wouldn't mind kind of elaborate on that? Thank you.
We have done a few pilot schemes. We don't give the geography out for our temporary accommodation, but with our pilot schemes, we've looked at repurposing accommodation to ensure that it meets the needs of families, and those have gone really well. We recently took a paper through Cabinet to extend that pilot to be a 10-year leased-in project to provide accommodation. What we do find is that giving particularly families who have a more than 2 or 3 bedroom need accommodation there has worked out really well. There's a sense of community, and having a stable temporary place to live can undoubtedly give residents a better foundation to look forward and to start planning for a permanent home, and to give them something to look towards. And it allows our staff to work with them in order to help them prioritise what they're selecting on either choose and move or within the private sector. So we've expanded that scheme now up to a significant number of units, to just short of 36.
Thank you, that's really positive. And the other question is on the estate buildings, with them being listed. Has a cost analysis been done, and potentially any, well, the word I'm looking for is sort of a future, there's a contingency in case there's any works that might appear that we don't want to find that we've got a huge cost bill basically later on, especially with them being listed?
So this is the second lot of external funding that the team has managed to leverage in for estates building. We've had some previous funding to do external works, and this funding is to do further work within inside the building. So I'm quite proud of the track record the team have for bringing in funding for our listed buildings. That said, listed buildings are wonderful, but an exceptionally high cost to us as an authority. We have a significant number of them, and the conversion cost for those buildings will undoubtedly be greater than it would be for a blank box. But they do offer a fantastic environment when they've been converted for living. So Thomas and Liz are working to make sure that the next stage of work, particularly on estates buildings, takes into account the whole life cycle cost of the building. But undoubtedly for a listed building, the life cycle cost is significantly in excess of one that's not listed.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? All right, I'd like to thank officers and the Cabinet portfolio holder for your presentation today and answering our questions. Panel dates for the next meeting will be circulated shortly. I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance today.